Welcome back to the main stage, day 2 of IAA or IAA Transportation. How is it going for you guys? Are you enjoying it? I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. If you're standing in the back, there are plenty of seats in the front. Come and join us. It's much more fun to sit in the front. You have a way better view. If you're joining us on the web stream, welcome. We're happy to have you. Our next panel is about carbon neutrality. Sustainability in logistics is more than just carbon neutrality, but what does that actually mean? We are about to find out. I'd like to bring up our panel, which is going to be moderated by the editor-in-chief of DVZ, Sebastian Reimann, and your panelists. A warm welcome to the main stage.
So, gentlemen. Yeah, well, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here. Thank you for you guys to come up here on stage at IAA Transportation in Hanover. My name is Sebastian Reimann. I'm the editor-in-chief at DVZ, Deutsche Verkehrszeitung, so we are a special interest title just for transport and logistics here in Germany. And we have a very international panel here on stage, which I would like to introduce to you. Right next to me is Kurk Wilks. He's the president and CEO of MANN and HUMMEL. I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit in just a minute, what MANN and HUMMEL is doing, how you can contribute to the topic of sustainability. But what I learned is we have a very experienced panel here on stage. You are with MANN and HUMMEL for more than 20 years, I think.
Correct.
Worked in the US, now here in Europe, so it's very good to have you here, Kurk.
Thank you.
Next to him is Marcel. He is with Mercedes-Benz for quite a long time as well, more than 15 years. And you are in charge as Senior Manager, Product and Business Strategy for Mercedes-Benz Vans. It's great to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Peter Harris, he's topping everything now regarding experience. He has been with UPS for 33 years, I think. And you are the Vice President for International Sustainability at UPS, so you have the whole topic under your umbrella, I would say. It's great to have you here, Peter.
Thank you. Sounds like I get the long-term award.
Yeah. And our next guest is Johannes F.D. Hill. He's the head of Global Business Development at RYTLE. It's a young company. You have been with the company for a little bit over 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
You've been in the startup business for a little more time now, and it's very good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
So we have very different perspectives on the topic of sustainability, and maybe let's start with you, Kurk. Just said, how is MANN and HUMMEL, what exactly are you doing, and how can you contribute as a company to the topic of sustainability?
So MANN and HUMMEL is an international company focused on filtration, and if you think about this transformation that we're in to new energy vehicles or alternate propulsion systems and the drive to be more sustainable, we believe filtration, which by our mission is the separation of the useful from the harmful, plays a vital role. So obviously, as a socially responsible production partner, I have to contribute to a reduction in my CO2. But also, we feel we're in a unique opportunity to enable our customers to provide solutions that reduce their footprint.
And I mean, the topic of filtration is not new. That it has been around for quite a while, I would say. Has anything changed in the last couple of years?
Sure. When you think about filtration and we think about emissions in general, we know that CO2 represents about 15% of the total emissions from a vehicle. That leaves 85% of the emissions, fine dust, generated from brakes or tire wear or road wear, that still has to be dealt with or understood. So when we think about the air that we breathe, the particles that comes in to a PM10 standard, then we think about fine dust filtration as an alternative to develop a system that provides communities or areas of high pollution with an offset.
All right. Marcel, Mercedes-Benz, a very old company as well, has been around for a while, I would say, as well. How are you dealing with the topic of sustainability?
For us,
just say a few words about Mercedes-Benz vans. We are a small business unit within Mercedes-Benz AG, and we're doing all the vans you are seeing in the streets with a star in front. So just think of RVs or cab courier parcel vehicles. So they are shaping the cityscape more than ever. And for us, sustainability is a prerequisite actually for everything what we are doing. So this is why it's also my responsibility, very closely linked to business and product strategy, so that every decision that we'll take, we always consider sustainability as a basic premise. And of course, we are working hard on our transformation to carbon-free transportation. We're, at the end of this year, we are a full-line provider of e-vans. That means that every vehicle you can buy at Mercedes-Benz Vans, you can also have as an e-drive version. And that's a pretty important step, of course. But first, that's just part of the story, because sustainability is much, much more. Kurk just mentioned Find Us. That's an issue we are dealing with in our Sustainea. I'm sure we are coming to that a bit later on. We have a good cooperation there. So there are many, many aspects we are working on in terms of sustainability besides CO2, which is, of course, very important.
Yeah, I think we come into that a little bit later. Is it only CO2, only carbon neutrality, or is it different things? Peter, I learned that UPS wants to have 40% of its ground operations on alternative fuels by 2025, I think. So that's not really a long time anymore. It's a large goal. How far have you come so far?
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. So just to step back from that a little bit to put it in context. So yeah, we're a logistics company. We move things around the planet. That's what we do. We move about 2% of global GDP on a daily basis. So we sort of deal in significant numbers. And to your point, when you look at doing that sustainably, and you say, okay, what does it mean to be sustainable as a logistics organization? It's about meeting the needs of the organization today without compromising the needs of society tomorrow and in the future. So for sure, a big part of that is about the greenhouse gas challenge, and we are on the road towards carbon neutrality. And you mentioned one of our milestones, which is 40% alternative fuels in our ground network by 2025. Really ambitious goal. You know, we're talking about going way beyond experiment into scale, and we're well on the road towards achieving that. But sustainability, to the point that my colleagues have already mentioned, sustainability is a lot more than just greenhouse gases. When you look at that definition, you have to think also in terms of the other environmental challenges of air quality, pollution, congestion, but also more broadly. I think you have to think about sustainability holistically and think about the social and governance aspects that are important as well. So, you know, we can maybe come back later on to talk about where we're moving in terms of our work with humanitarian logistics, volunteering, tree planting, transparency. All of these things come together into a joined up picture of the organization and its role in society.
Johannes, you work with RYTLE, and you have a little bit different approach. It's not yet a global company. It's a Germany-based, in Germany founded company, RYTLE. What exactly are you doing?
So RYTLE is basically focusing on the last mile, so-called last mile. I think it's becoming a buzzword. We prefer to say last meter, actually, but it's more or less a provider of hardware and software for different companies, such as CEP companies, such as UPS. Focusing on a sustainable approach when it comes to the urban areas, especially with regards to so-called cargo bikes, which we're using, electrified cargo bikes, to make transportation more effective, more easy from time to time, and kind of answering the problem of having less vehicles within urban areas, within cities, and this is one of the big approach of RYTLE. Interacting since 2017 now, or we basically started with the idea 2017, 2018, and interacting in 16 countries so far around the globe. So we are becoming more and more globally, and it's a very interesting journey we are focusing on right now.
Peter, I mean, UPS is, I think, still the largest logistics company overall. If you look at turnover worldwide, I think around 100 billion turnover per year. If you look at sustainability and if you want to achieve your goals, is that mainly switching to alternative fuels to get your fleet on a E basis, or is that, are you on a good way there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I guess when we talk about sustainable logistics, we tend to automatically think about alternative fuels. And that is for sure a big piece of the picture. But even if we just focus on the environmental piece of sustainability, there's more to it than that. And actually, when you break down the environmental challenge and you start with emissions, even within emissions, it's important that before you go into the field of alternative fuels, you have to think about efficiency first. Efficiency is really important because otherwise you're not minimizing the amount of energy that's required. You're just making the problem too big to deal with purely in terms of alternative fuels. So there's efficiency that's important, and then there's alternative fuels that's important. And that's just the emissions part of the debate. Then you can think in terms of also there's challenges around congestion, which are also environmental. And then there's the broader agenda when you start to think about what's the role of the organization in society. We've set a goal that we will improve the well-being of the lives of 1 billion people by 2040, because we think we have a role in society which is bigger than just becoming carbon neutral. That's a piece of the pie. So we have a number of strands through which we will achieve that. For example, we aim to, through the good work of the entire UPS family, over 500,000 UPSers around the world, we will deliver 30 million UPSers volunteer hours working in all forms of good works around the world, charitable enterprises, 30 million hours by 2030. We'll plant 50 million trees by 2030. And so all of these things come together into a holistic vision of what is the role that UPS plays in society. For sure, we move people's goods. That's what we do. That's the fundamentals. And we need to do that efficiently and effectively and profitably to meet the needs of our customers. But we have a bigger role than that. And that starts with becoming carbon neutral and eliminating the negative effects of logistics. But it's also about amplifying the good things that we can do in society through volunteering, through humanitarian logistics. And then building that onto a good governance platform, making sure that we're transparent, making sure we have a diverse workforce. 30% of our full-time management will be women by 2025.
Okay.
All of these things are important to create a holistic vision of the role of UPS in today's world.
Marcel, if we stick with the alternative fuels, as it is such a buzzword and a huge topic also here on IAA Transportation, I mean, how do you deal with it in your van fleet? Is that all e-mobility now? Is that the way to go forward? Or are you still thinking about hydrogen, for example? Is that also an option?
At the end, the solution has to fit for our customers. So that's why we starting the transformation, and we started to talk very much with our customers. We have a broad range of customers, as I mentioned before, and we talked a lot about them, what they really need. And the conclusion for us was that they want us to fully focus on e-mobility, and that's what we are doing currently. Like I said, we are a full-line provider end of this year. Next year, our next generation e-Sprinter is going to come, and in 2025, we are going to launch a totally new platform, highly flexible and modular, which is very important also in terms of resources and to reduce the use of resource. For example, if you're looking at a cab case, you don't need a range of 400, 500 kilometers. You have like fixed routes, about 80 to 220 kilometers. So that means that you don't have to build in a huge battery, so you can build in a smaller battery. And that's what we're talking about, those flexible modules within our vehicle to suit every customer's needs at the end and contribute positively to sustainability in total. So currently, MB Vans full focus on e-mobility.
Kurk, I mean, you work with the OEMs. You have a kind of an outside look as a company. What do you tell them? Are they on the right path with e-mobility, or would you suggest something totally different, for example?
I think we have to recognize there's many paths. So as MANN and HUMMEL is a partner or a supplier to the OEs, we have to have answers to all of the options available. So if you think about the business in terms of clean mobility, alternate propulsion systems can go from e-mobility or electric vehicles, for which we then have to find solutions, filtration, whether it's e-axle for efficiency gains, venting units for the stack themselves. If we talk about hydrogen, which is also a viable technology that we see also coming forward, we have to find filtration solutions for the humidification of the cell or the coolant of the cell. So there we're active. So we're in traditional combustion engines also. We see with synthetic tools further needs for the development of our core business. So we're active in a lot of areas. So on the powertrain specifically, we believe there's a relevance to filtration to become more efficient in the use of whatever that propulsion system is for the needed application. And then as we talked on the air we breathe, so we think about the business in terms of clean mobility, clean air, clean water. And when we think about clean air, then we see the vehicle in our partnership with Mercedes-Benz Vans as an opportunity to become this capture device where we understand that through a fine dust particle filter placed in the appropriate place, that we can remove contaminants to the equivalent of about 50% of the contaminants that vehicle is generating in fine dust. So now we're actually using the mobility device, if you will, beyond the transportation, but as a way to bring a cleaner air to the communities we serve. So imagine a heavily polluted city, without naming names, we can think of them in every continent and be able to use the transportation towards that last mile, last meter, to be a way to bring an offset to the emissions of the vehicle, but also a contribution then to the ability to breathe cleaner air. All right.
That is your project you're doing together as a corporation,
Yes,
right?
correct.
With Mercedes-Benz, and it has, I think, if I understand it right, some kind of platform to go along with it, the Sustainier. What exactly is that? Maybe one of you can explain.
Like I said, the first step was transformation to e-drive, and then with our ambition 2039, we said that we committed ourselves to be fully CO2 neutral over the whole value chain in 2039. And then the next step was to think about how can we make sustainable much more tangible than just talking about CO2 reduction. And we decided to use a Korean parcel vehicle because that is the common use case people see when they think of vans in a city, in an urban area. And with the vehicle, we targeted actually 3 main areas. The first one is livable cities, and there we have to talk about air quality and noise reduction. The second target was resource conservation and climate protection, like reused and recycled materials to build up the car. And the third target was traffic safety. And for the first target, the air quality, we have a very good cooperation with MANN and HUMMEL, and we have added fine dust filters to the front and to the underbody, and during the operation and during driving around the street, the vehicle filters out fine dust particles out of the air. And the fact is, many people, if they think of fine dust, they think that the part of the vehicle which causes most emissions is the engine. So many people think if we just transform everything to e-drive, the problem is solved. But that's just actually not true. It's just a minor piece. The main part of the emissions comes from the brakes and the tires. So we have added optimized brake discs and optimized tires to reduce the overall emission of the vehicle. And then we have added the filter system to filter out the air while operating and also while loading, while charging process, because during the charging process there's a little vent in the front to cool the overall system, and that sucks in air and filters the air also while charging, and that improves the overall air quality.
And it filters out the fine dust that is overall in the air, or pretty much the one that is created through driving the car?
It filters everything. Like there's the fine dust the emission is from the brakes if you use the brakes, the tires, but it's also resuspension from the streets. So it drives around the city and filters everything he can get into his front. Yeah.
So again, if you think about it, 85%, so if we say 15% of the emissions from the tailpipe can be solved with an alternative propulsion, that leaves 85%, specifically the fine dust question, and this is where we then start to think about how do we offset. And I think through advances also, as you mentioned, in terms of improved braking, we also have a brake dust filter for those applications where that technology might not be able to easily be applied. So the idea is to capture as much of the equivalent value of that vehicle's emissions in fine dust.
van or things like that. You have a totally different approach. You have a whole system of e-cargo bikes. What is it about?
So when we talk about the whole system, we basically focus, when we started with the idea of RYTLE, we always said we just don't want to just focus on the last mile, but on a broader range, because what we have learned is that logistics do not start in last mile, but they start way much earlier, and you still need to get all the different goods you're having within urban areas into the city centers. So what we have focused on was basically that we wanted to basically use what is already an existing size within the logistics. So in our point of view, a 10 feet container, 20 feet containers are well established in Europe, for instance. We basically put the half of it. We have a hydraulic outtake system on this hub, so-called hub, and we have the speciality about our vehicle is that we have an exchangeable box system, which means you can lower down the boxes you're transporting on the so-called mover on our cargo bike, and you can pre-commission those kind of boxes. This is quite beneficial because in the end you can pre-commission goods already within the outer area of the cities, transport them within the 10 feet container with an electrical operated vehicle, for instance, into the city centers and leave it there. Because the point about it is, it doesn't really make sense to talk about sustainability within the last mile if you don't think about the mile before already. And that was one of the very big learnings we have made so far, that we wanted to have a complete chain there. And the complete chain consists out of different box systems and most certainly focusing always on the Euro pallet size, because what we know is you can't improve logistics when it comes to sizes. There is always a size, and that's the Euro pallet. So we try to adapt from the big size, from the trailer, etc., to the small vehicle, but it's always a Euro pallet size.
So it's basically also about bundling transport, right? So you can transport the things more efficiently.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a software behind it as well that plans the route on an exactly basis, or what is that about?
We are getting there for now. So we are talking a lot about the fleet management, also being sustainable when it comes to the whole vehicles, but also when it comes to the data science, to collecting all the different data sets, and also to the routing. So there are a lot of points coming together now. First of all, you need to start somewhere, and somewhere was definitely the hardware. But now with the hardware, we're getting into the software development as well, and find out what the customer really needs. And the customer, for instance, UPS, to listen to them and to say, okay, we're gonna adapt to your demands. I think that's very crucial. And it's always slightly easier when you're a young company. You can adapt way much faster because, well, it's basically a white scratch and a white label approach, and you can just see what's coming up there.
Peter, I mean, if you look at the last mile, do you see that on a total e-mobility basis, not too far away?
So, for sure, as far as the last mile is concerned, electrification will be the key technology. And in that space, I think there are really three things that are important. One is the move towards EVs, in the way that my colleagues have been describing. And we've partnered with Arrival. You can see the Arrival UPS EV in Hall 13. We've been working with them now for a number of years to develop an optimized urban electric distribution vehicle, which is more than just electric. And the first of those is on test right now, and we intend to purchase 10,000 of those for Europe and North America in the coming few years. So that's an important piece of the pie, along with the innovations that you've been describing in terms of air quality emissions as well. The second thing that's really important in the last mile space is the recharging infrastructure. Is often forgotten and ignored, but actually really important in terms of getting down the cost of getting the power to the vehicles. We've been doing a lot of work on smart grid technologies. We developed what we think is the world's first fleet-scale smart grid solution in our central London operation, which has dramatically reduced the cost of getting the EV fleet in London recharged. So that's an important piece. And then the third important piece is about what can you do that doesn't involve vans at all? Yeah, and that really then takes you into the e-cycle and e-walker space. And it's important there, as Johannes has said, to think about the system, because you can't just take an e-cycle and use it to replace a van. Obviously, they're not the same thing. You have to think about how does the volume get to the e-cycle, and then it's all about innovations around avoiding double handling, demountable boxes, and thinking about efficient ways of moving the volume and handling it the minimum number of times. So we've deployed cycle-type solutions of that nature in about over 30 cities now around the world. We're still learning. In conjunction with our partners, we've worked with RYTLE. We're working with Fernhay on a device that you can also see in Hall 13, the eQuad. So again, it comes back to this necessity of taking a holistic view of the entire system of logistics and thinking about what is required to solve the entire problem, not just the problem that's immediately in front of you at the time.
I mean, if you look at your whole supply chain, what is the hardest part? I mean, we also learned from Mr. Appel, okay, last mile, maybe it's quite set how the path is, but for example, for sea freight, it's a totally different story. For air freight, probably it's a totally different story.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because very often we think last mile because it's so visible, it's right in front of us, but actually in reality, if you look at the entire global logistics network, and we talk just at this stage, let's just talk about greenhouse gas, the greenhouse gas challenge. About 60% of our global emissions comes from our airline. Yeah, that is probably the single biggest challenge. Electrification will play a role. We have drones and we're developing eVTOLs that we will deploy that will be pure electric. But in reality, because of the size and the scale of the challenge that large aircraft represent, it will be a long time, frankly, if ever, before electric or even hydrogen solutions are able to meet our needs in terms of long-haul heavy aircraft. So sustainable aviation fuel is going to be a crucial part of the solution for aircraft, probably forever. And what we need is the ability to work on a global basis with a range of partners to bring sustainable aviation fuel to the point where it's available and at a sensible price, so that it becomes economically viable to deploy at scale. That's still a little way off. We're doing a lot of work in that space, but it needs to happen. And then if you step down one level to the long-haul trucks that sit in between the aircraft and the last mile space, that's also challenging. So it's not yet ready for full electrification, even though I think it will get there. So we're working heavily there on a bridging solution involving biomethane or renewable natural gas. So there's natural gas that comes from organic waste, can give us a good bridging solution for probably the next 10 or maybe even 15 or so years before genuine zero-emission solutions in the form of electrification reach into that category.
I mean, Marcel, the whole topic of the infrastructure for tanking and for electrification and so has been a topic today as well. I mean, how do you look at it? Is that still the key driver? We have to get the infrastructure in place, because otherwise no electric van will be rolling on the street, no hydrogen truck will run on the streets.
Yeah, it's definitely the key to transformation, because especially for our commercial customers, the system has to work because it's there, they earn money with it. It's for vans, it's very special because we as vans, we have private customers and commercial customers. And the private customers, they are more or less depending on the public loading infrastructure and their own infrastructure, but especially for the commercial customers, they have totally different requirements in terms of fleet loading and stuff. And we are supporting them also in their build-up of an infrastructure, their planning. We advise them with some partners we have all over Europe to build up a proper loading infrastructure for their business. That's what we are doing, yeah.
And do you run a cooperative approach there? I mean, let's say you talk with different small to medium-sized companies there and ask them to join each other, or how does it work?
we're not doing this alone, because in that huge transformation, it's always important to have good cooperations with many different companies. And in Germany, for example, we are working together with the Mobile House. That's our partner for Germany, and they assist our German customers in that process. And we have like several separate partners all over Europe to do that. Because I mean, to really get that transformation going, especially in commercial business, is very important to show the customers that it's a seamless transformation for them and that they don't face any challenges at all, because if so, they would stick to their combustion engine. So we are doing everything we can to get that hurdle as down as we can possibly do, to convince them that e-mobility is the right way, and we are recognizing that it's changing rapidly. So the demand is very high. So we sold almost 30,000 vans so far, and the demand is still rising. So that process is very good working for us.
I mean, Kurk, you offer technology for all kinds of options there are on the market, but on the other hand, the infrastructure needs to be there. How do you see it? Will there be kind of both infrastructure? Does it need to be there for, let's say, for hydrogen and for e-mobility, and maybe we have to run on diesel for some time as well?
Sure. You know, we study that as well. When we look at, I mean, the commitment towards sustainability, we know it'll be met by alternative propulsion systems. So we know electrification plays a large role in that. We have divisions working on how to help with battery storage and the energy conservation within that. So we're active in multiple areas. So for us, it's about looking at our customers' specific needs and saying, how are we adapting our technology to be most efficient as possible? How are we bringing that product to them that in and of itself is sustainable? You asked earlier about the supply chain. So if you think about providing a fine dust filter, it's important then that our customer gets that filter with a high content of recycled goods, produced with a carbon footprint that's the minimal needed. And then also, once we think about the end of use, that we contemplate how to recycle that so that it's not an environmental concern to someone else. So there are a lot of aspects, infrastructure, the supply chain that we're considering, and we approach it from the concept of filtration. So we look at the technology, its applicable advantage to a given industry, and say, how can we help that process?
I mean, we kind of get into the field of circular economy now, right? With you know, taking the stuff back and all that kind of stuff. Are we there still on the on the starting point, or?
I would say so. I mean, we understand from producing the product, our commitment towards carbon neutrality. So we've made a strong commitment by 2035 that our own production would be carbon neutral. After we consider the post-use of the product, we have to have good partnerships and understand then what's the best and safest way then to dispose of those.
I think you have a goal of what is it, carbon neutrality for the whole value chain by 2050?
Correct.
So I guess that's a big step then, right? Because it always gets complicated if you don't just look at your own production, but at the whole value chain, isn't it?
Exactly. So as they have asked us to consider our path, we do the same with our own suppliers, our own logistics partners, and I think this then comes together as a grouping of like-minded individuals seeking to solve common problems. So for us, it's fully acceptable that we have to take a larger role in this question of sustainability. We believe it's more than just CO2. We do believe it's about clean water and clean air, so we're taking active steps in each of those areas where filtration makes a difference.
I mean, Johannes, a large city is a complex thing as such as well, and we've learned about companies who can cooperate and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you have your new vehicles, it's an e-cargo bike, it runs on the street in a large city. Maybe some people are interested, maybe some other people look at it in a weird way. I mean, how do you convince really the people that this is the right way for sustainable city logistics?
I think people are looking more and more, and we are talking about a broad range of people. So we have a lot of different stakeholders within urban areas, and we believe that, and I personally know that as well. You're driving into a city, and you have, let's talk about a CEP van, having it in the third lane, and you just have to wait and wait and wait until you can cross it. You see someone walking around all the time. We know that from studies that, for instance, such a CEP courier can walk around 2.5 kilometers per day in London, for instance, and we see that it's not efficient. And we know, and personally, from my point of view as well, I see that this is starting to become a bottleneck. Really, if you live in a city, in an inner city, you're asking for silence at some stage. You're asking for carbon neutrality. You want to have an area which is more livable again. And I think it's not really about convincing people. I think it's the demand which is raising up by the generations for now. I think it's very important to listen to the people for now, but also for the future generations. And we see that people are more and more asking, and we get this. And this is always very, very nice to hear. We get this straight feedback from couriers from different companies that they tell us, people are starting to ask us, what is it? Like, is it a bicycle? What do you do? And people are getting quite curious about it. And because they see, okay, the company is doing something for acting sustainable, if you like. And yeah, it's, I would say every time you see a mover, you start to smile, you know, and we recognize that, actually. We recognize that.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes left, exactly, actually. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Yeah, we got one right here in the first row. Just wait a second. Microphone is coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentations and your interesting discussion. I have a question for Mr. Harris. I'm interested, you were mentioning other types of sustainability that you're working on. What about packaging and other waste, you know, plastics that's being yeah, developed, so to say, in the whole process, in the whole chain? Thank you.
Yeah, no, good point. So the whole waste agenda is an important part of the environmental space within sustainability. So we're working quite actively in that. So to give you a couple of examples. So all of our branded packaging is fully recyclable. We have within our healthcare division a whole range of reusable packaging. Probably one of the more interesting initiatives that I would mention, given we were talking about circular economy, we've partnered with an organization called TerraCycle to support something which is called Loop. And Loop is all about how do you actually, if you think about retail products like you know, soap powders and shampoos and things like that, they typically come in single-use containers that may be recyclable or may not be, and they just get thrown away by the user. But if you think about that logically, it should be possible for those containers to be reused. And what Loop does is it enables, through our logistics system, the goods, whatever they are, to be delivered in a container that can then be taken back through our network to be refilled and reused repeatedly. Yeah, and we think that's an important step forward, because the waste agenda, as I'm sure you're aware, is about reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle should be last. We should be thinking about ways of reusing or even not needing the goods to be there to be used in the first place. So I think initiatives of this type, as we move into the world of the circular economy and reducing resource usage, are important. And your question speaks to the point about the environmental agenda being bigger than just greenhouse gas.
Mm-hmm. Do we have another question from the audience here? They're in the second row, right here on the right side from my view.
Thank you. We heard from you, Peter, that you see until 2037 approximately methane fuels or e-fuels as a bridging technology until e-technology is so far to replace current diesel. I would like to ask Marcel, Mercedes, how do you see this bridging technology? Because I understand that until 2030, 2035, the percentage in vehicle of operation of e-technology or hydrogen technology is quite low. How do you see this bridging technology as Mercedes?
I can talk for Mercedes-Benz Vans, and as I said, we're going to ramp up our e-drive transformation very, very quickly. And actually, we are now already ready to sell an e-drive vehicle to customers who are willing to pay our cars. And if you look at in terms of commercial customers, you always talk about TCO. That means the total cost of ownership, and that is a very important KPI for our customers. And we are already ready to give them an offer for an e-drive vehicle, which is equivalent to a combustion engine. So for us, the time is already right to switch to electric drive. And our transformation aims for a BEV share of 70% in 2030, and we want to speed up in terms of e-mobility. So as I said, full focus on that currently.
So what, that was 70% in 2030 by e-vans? Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Well, gentlemen, then, oh yeah, there we have one right there. Very good.
Yes, good morning. Any of you guys have any specific initiatives related to hydrogen vehicles coming in the next 10 years? Thank you.
Hydrogen?
Hydrogen. So when we think about the hydrogen as a propulsion solution, yes, we do see industries where this will be an applicable answer to the question. And so when you think about filtration, from controlling the quality of the air into the fuel cell, to the humidification, so to make sure we have the right balance of humidity, to even then managing the ions and the electrical charge coming off of the coolant loop, we're active with several customers on applications in multiple industries. The question always is, the infrastructure then to support a hydrogen fleet. And so we see certain industries probably adapting sooner than others. We think the off-highway or the mining is an interesting option when you think about its ability to build that infrastructure to support a dedicated fleet. But for us, it's also an area that we see as a relevant solution, again, given the industry and the supporting infrastructure.
Yeah, the same for us. We talked a lot with our customers, and the result was that they want us to fully focus on e-drive and e-mobility. And I have correct myself, the 70% was in 2039.
2039, okay, very good. Peter.
Yeah, and just to add to my colleagues' points there, I think so hydrogen has a future, but it has some weaknesses. And the primary weakness that hydrogen has is efficiency. So if you look at the entire energy chain from the production of the electricity needed to create green hydrogen and then the reconversion of the use of the hydrogen in a fuel cell back to create electricity to drive a vehicle, that's a very inefficient process, about 25% efficient. So logically, therefore, I think for transportation, for transportation, you have to ask yourself the question, why would I not electrify? Yeah. So I think for road vehicles, certainly in the last mile space, arguably also in the long haul space, because electrification is there in last mile and is coming in long haul, electrification will probably be the answer. Where hydrogen will really play a role, though, are in those areas which you cannot realistically electrify. For example, medium-range aircraft that we were talking about earlier. Ships, for example. So ocean shipping, the use of hydrogen in the form of ammonia is a very promising solution for ocean shipping. So I think hydrogen will have a role, but again, we're moving into a multi-fuel future, away from a single fuel past. We just got to find the right solutions to the right questions.
Gentlemen, we have 2 minutes 30 left. I learned that the live feed will be cut off if we go over that time, so I would ask everybody for a short answer. I mean, you just mentioned the future is kind of more complex than we saw in the past. Johannes, starting with you, what is your expectation? Can we handle this more complex future?
I think we can handle it. We need to collaborate. We need to cooperate. We need to find solutions together. Listen to the given generation, listen to the next generation, And as I said, try to cooperate in a certain way. That means talking about logistics, first mile, last mile, but there's going to be a pool of different solutions in our point of view. And I think it's going to be crucial to listen to the different stakeholders and getting them together. Otherwise, you're just running into a big problem, most certainly.
Peter, also asking for a short answer.
Yeah, so for sure we can get there. It's about partnerships, it's about innovation, it's about taking some real-world engineering decisions and getting on and making the investments. It's then about getting out there and scaling. It's about organizations making bold commitments and delivering on them, taking the investments, getting it done, but for sure it can happen.
Marcel, what do you think?
Not much more to add. We have to tackle this challenge, and we have to find a solution together. And it's important to do brave decisions and to just step forward. Yeah.
Kurk, the last word is yours.
From my side, you know, at MANN and HUMMEL, we believe this topic of sustainability, everybody wins, all stakeholders, the world wins, consumers win, technology wins, customers win, we develop new partnerships. So for us, we're very positive about the transformation. But we'll learn a lot, and the focus is true. What we're thinking about are solutions that bring cleaner air, cleaner water, cleaner mobility. We don't find much wrong with that.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I think we have gone a short path through the jungle. I mean, there would be much more to talk about, but well, maybe next time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your attendance as well. It was a pleasure being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and a big thank you from my side for being such a punktliche Moderator. That's enough German for me. Guys, you are welcome to exit rather down the middle. Thank you very much. I feel like I learned a lot, and a short path through the jungle indeed.
Go. Thank you.
If you are joining us on the web stream, we are happy to have you. If you're in the audience,